Welcome back to the 100 Stories. It's several months since I've actually said that to camera, and of course the last time I said that I think I was on the battlefields of France, but I'm not there today. I'm here at our Caulfield campus at Monash University. I'm joined by Margaret Harris, who's been the tutor for this course and who's been monitoring all of your fantastic comments so carefully over the last couple of weeks. And can I just emphasise from the outset what a pleasure it is to meet with you virtually today. I realised actually my first job in the academy was working in distance education. In those days there weren't cameras like that. There was just a sheet of paper and an essay which would come in regularly, and you'd feed back your comments to students. And we realised just how difficult it was to maintain any sense of connection with students who were studying off campus. So I'm pleased the way that this technology has developed. I'm pleased that you've had the opportunity to engage with the course and speak back to us. And I'm delighted too at what a huge global community we have. Although we're fielding this course from Australia with, of course, an Australian prism, it's fantastic to hear your points of views from all across the globe, and the community of learning that you've created amongst yourselves is something that both Margaret and I have found really worthwhile. So welcome to the first feedback video for the 100 Stories.
So shall we get started?
Why not?
Carrying on from the theme of a global community of learning, we have had several comments from learners about the Australian focus, about how that can be applied to perhaps their own situation, and they're kind of struggling to see why we've done it like this. Could you talk to that? I know that it was very deliberate.
Yeah, no, it's a very legitimate comment, I think. Well, the obvious answer is the answer we've sent you in print, and that is, of course, that an Australian course is obviously going to focus on a lot of Australian material. But can I just say how rich Australia's records are? The other day, I went to an exhibition about soldier settlement in the city of Melbourne, and I was introduced to all of their new sources online. Now, Australia is remarkable in that we now have land settlement records, so the story of the men and women when they came back from war, all digitised. We have the service records, all digitised. We have the repatriation records, and we're now in the process of digitising them. So we've probably got one of the most extensive archival records in the world that survived. We didn't have the Blitz here, of course, in Australia. A lot of really precious World War I records were lost in Britain and other parts of Europe, but they've survived here. So really it's created this wonderful tapestry that anyone can dip into now. And we're delighted that we can profile that to a global audience, and people can investigate these questions, which I think are universal. I think the themes that we're looking at in this course, the big themes, grief, trauma, the difficulties of adjusting to post-war life, I think these are themes that were true of any individual affected by war, regardless in which nation they served. And if I can just speak from my own experience here, my grandfather fought in the Great War, but he served with the British forces, and virtually none of his war records actually survived. Now, had he been an Australian, that record would be more complete. Now, I'm not arguing that there's a superiority in the Australian sources at all. All I am saying is that they are far more extensive, and therefore, for historians, they represent a treasure.
Another question we've been having kind of over the course of the discussion is how we've put the course together, what we've edited out and what we've left in. I think some of our learners, they're worried about what we've left out, because of course silence is another form of speech. Could you speak to how we decided how these stories would be structured and why we've put them in that way?
The 100 Stories are really trying to redress what we saw as a bit of a historical imbalance, particularly here in Australia. In Australia, of course, the way we remember the war is woven up in a narrative of nationhood, and we often tend to celebrate the war, to even sometimes I fear to glorify war. Now, I know that's probably not true of the British audience. I mean, if you read, say, Don Todman's work, he talks about the narrative there being one of futility, and how really this didn't represent the experience of many of the people who went to war for various reasons. In Australia, we're not faced with that same situation. We're actually faced with a situation where a much more positive view of war has emerged. So we consciously wanted to discuss the difficult questions, discuss the confronting questions, and also to take advantage of that wonderful archival narrative I referred to a moment ago. And I guess we might volunteer something about you here, Margaret, because I'm really conscious that you've not just monitored this course, but you've also, of course, worked within Flanders Fields Museum in Ypres in Belgium. And you'll remember as you went in Flanders Fields that wonderful, extraordinary, challenging recreation of the casualty clearing station and the dramatisation of Alan Lamotte's work, and indeed we've got it here, The Backwash of War. And this is a nurse. She happens to be American, but she might belong to any nation. And what does she say? Many people will tell you about the glory of war. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the backwash, the things that we don't want to confront. And we've consciously done that in the course. We said from the outset that we would do that, and I think that was the right choice to make.
And now on a lighter note, I would just like to... We've had several comments talking about various media, of course. With the centenary, there's a lot of television and movies and things. And I wanted to know what you would recommend if you were to pick one to watch.
Well, I actually think, well, I should say from the outset that history and television and film are different. They're different mediums. We work with different vectors, and that's quite right and fair and appropriate. I think there are some great blends, some great doco-dramas. One of these might be The War That Changed Us. There you've got a group, I think there are about 6 historians who were interviewed to camera who talk about the situations that are being portrayed in the film. But there are also recreations using the diaries of the men and women who served. So it's got that element of drama, it's got that element of creative imagination, but it's also faithful to the archival narrative. That's a really hard balance to strike, and all praise to our ABC for getting that right, I think. And Margaret, is there a favourite doco-drama or indeed a film, a historical film that you think has accurately portrayed the experience of war?
I quite liked a film I saw recently called The Wipers' Times, which I thought had a fair few unusual things about it. So it didn't directly have an enemy. It was about people being bored in the trenches. It was about people moving to, that they were having fun, and they had... obviously their life was difficult and they were in danger, and that wasn't downplayed at all. But at the same point in time, men were bored. Men did treat the war as if they had gone to work. Men did have lives before and they did have lives after, and I thought that the film was really interesting in that it showed all of those things. The BBC did a very good job with that one. I think our British learners might find it really interesting. I know it's free on Netflix if anybody's got Netflix.
Yeah.
So.
And indeed, Reggie Biggs's story, which is all about wipers, is one of the ones that's written up as part of the 100 Stories project. It's not a digital story yet. We're working on that still. But his story is very much along those lines of boredom, of finding ways to entertain yourself, of the time outside of the frontline trenches, which is important.
Yeah, I think so. I suppose that's it. I mean, thank you very much to all of our commentators for commenting. Please keep commenting. I enjoy reading them and I enjoy interacting with you. And I especially will enjoy bringing them back to you, Bruce, so that you can get your commentary again.
It's always a pleasure to read what our learners are saying, especially because you represent such a diverse and such a global community, because really you help us to see that experience through different eyes. So you're not just learners, we're learners in this as well. And why not invite more learners to join us? The great thing about this medium is it's not a lecture theatre. There isn't a limited seating capacity. Anyone can join the 100 Stories, and we can make 1 million stories in time. And thank you again for the privilege of your company.